Welcome to Take It From Us, a podcast about the adventure of relationships. This show is all about exploring the fun and exciting heart of relationships, while always keeping it 100% authentic. So, take it from us, the expert non-experts.
Great song.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back. We are so glad that you're with us today. We have a great show in store for you.
Best one.
This is going to be the best one so
yet.
far. Yeah, that's right. So welcome so welcome to episode 2. We are going to be breaking down what this show is going to be all about. So, if you listen to episode 1, you kind of got our backstory, a little bit about who we are. That's not everything, but that's some of who we are. And so we just kind of want to take a journey with you. But the key focus for us.
That was an old guy thing to say.
What
I
was
want
it?
to take a journey with you.
Man.
I'm just saying, it just sounded a little old. It was very appropriate.
That's mean.
I'm sorry. I just had to be honest with
It's
you.
fine. It's fine. All right. So I am. So this show is all about relationships. Say it
Yes.
with me. Relationships. So this is about relationships. It's not just about marriage. It's not just about dating relationships. We're going to go into sibling relationships, father-son, mother-daughter.
Yeah. Parents, kids.
Yeah, we're going to
Friends.
friends. I mean, all the things, coworkers, all the things, because we have been all of those things. And so we just kind of want to, again, like I said, just help people kind of navigate relationships, because we know that sometimes relationships can get really, really messy and difficult and just kind of challenging.
Yeah.
But the coolest thing about relationships is they have an opportunity to make you better. And I think that's one of the coolest things about relationships is that a good relationship should make you someone different than who you are. And so navigating those relationships, finding those relationships is another thing that we'll be discussing. How to get out of relationships will be something that we discuss, because that's something that sometimes is difficult, whether that be a romantic relationship or even sometimes friendships. Sometimes friends just become not good for us anymore. And so it's sometimes it's good to know, how do I get out of these types of things? But again, we're here to just kind of share with you things that we've learned over our many years of life and our experiences.
Yeah. I thought a great way to start this would just be giving the definition of a relationship.
Awesome.
It's not a pretty life-changing definition, but I think it's important to recognize. The first one is the way in which two or more concepts, objects, or people are connected, or the state of being connected. So I think the word connected there, I think it's really important. The way in which two or more people or groups regard and behave toward each other. Oh, that's a good one. And the state of being connected by blood or marriage. So those are just some of the examples, but I think it's important to know those things going right off the bat.
Right. So ultimately, relationship stems or comes to where I'm connected.
Yeah.
So what am I connected to? Who am I connected to? That's kind of the thought process. And so those are the things that we want to look at. We want to look at our connections. And we want to look at, are we either best utilizing and are we best serving those connections that we've made?
Is it a good connection? Is it a bad connection?
Right. And, a lot of it is because, so I am the opposite. What is the opposite of a handyman?
A not handyman. I don't know. I like to refer to you as the breaker.
Yes, Lucy refers to me as the breaker.
I'm the fixer, you're the breaker.
So I'm very inquisitive. So I like to learn about things. I want to know how something
and
works,
smart,
functions, all of that stuff.
You are the smartest person
Oh,
I know.
don't you dare. So I want to learn how all those things. And I remember there was one time when I wanted to install a dimmer switch in our room. and in our bedroom. And
great.
so I was like, okay, well, I can figure this out. So what do all, millennial men do now when they want to learn how to do something? Where do they go? We go to YouTube. And so I went to YouTube. I started just kind of researching, how do I connect a dimmer switch to this light switch? How do I change it out? Blah, blah, blah. So I started looking, and then it started talking about like the ground and talking about live wires, talking about turning off the breakers,
Electrocution.
talking about how if you don't do it right, you could possibly die. In that moment, that was kind of that like, the record scratch kind of like moment of, yeah, let me just wait. And so,
Yeah. So lucky for us, my dad's an electrician.
yes, he's a master electrician.
So he just came and did it for us.
And so he can't, but he showed me how to do it. And I remember him showing me, and he showed me, I know enough, to turn breakers off and on, blah, 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 all that stuff. But then he started showing me, okay, so you turn the breakers off, then you disconnect the wires. You always make sure that the ground isn't grounded, while you're working with stuff, because you just have to be careful. And so all of that to say,
that it is or isn't?
I think that it is.
I feel like it's been a few years since this lesson, but that's fine. Let's just move on. Okay.
Paul, if you're listening to this, I need your help again. Anyway, all that to say this is that Paul took the time. His name's Lucy's dad's name is Paul. Paul took the time to show me what I needed to learn to make the connections in the correct way. Because if I had done it incorrectly, it could have cost me my life. It could have probably, burned up the wires, burned up that section of the house, all those things. And so I appreciated that moment because I was able to learn. I was able to, if Paul had made that mistake in the past, he was able to save me from it because I didn't ever have to not know how to do it correctly. So all of that to say, that's what I believe this show is all about. The show is all about saving you from the pain and making the bad connections that we so often do.
Yeah.
And we want to help save you from that by helping you see what are healthy relationships, what are not healthy relationships, what are what we would consider to be parasitic relationships, and meaning they're one-sided. And then, like we said earlier, how to stay in those relationships and how to get out of them. Again, as I said earlier, sometimes the reasons we don't leave relationships is because we don't know how to exit. Other than just ghosting them and and not texting them back and not calling them back or whatever. And that's not a healthy way to do it either. So we want to help you navigate that, how to do that, how to walk through that. And so that's what I kind of think this show is all about.
Yeah, I think it's important to recognize that if you want a relationship to grow, it has to be nurtured. Right. Just like a plant. I love plants. I love some plants. And so I actually went through and named all my plants. Anyway, neither here nor there. So just like any plant that you have to recognize that, each different kind of plant has different needs. Yeah. So like, I can't take care of, my garden outside, the green beans and the tomatoes, or my herbs in the house, the thyme. I can't treat those the same way. I'm going to treat my aloe plant or my fiddle leaf, that can only have water once a week, or when it's completely dry. It's just, I can't treat that relationship the same way. Right. It has to be nurtured in the way that it's supposed to be nurtured. Absolutely. In the way that it knows to grow. My fiddle leaf is supposed to have been in the rainforest. So if I treat it like it needs to be watered every single day and just drowning it, then it's going to die. Right. It's very sensitive to movement, whereas I can move my aloe vera plant pretty much wherever I want and it's going to be fine. Right. So it's the same thing in relationships. I'm not going to respond to you in the same way I'm going to respond to our son. Yeah. I'm not going to respond to the same way with my dad as I do my best friend. Because I'm older, he's my friend. But you understand what I'm saying? Right. Every relationship that's going to grow has to be nurtured.
And like you said, they can't be nurtured the same way.
Its own needs have to be met. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because you have to recognize that even like with a relationship with a friend or a parent who may not even live in the same city as you do.
Yeah.
That can't be nurtured the same way that a friend that lives in the city is nurtured. But that even goes to, I read a book. I read. No, but
You missed your little cue there. There it
so
is.
I read this book one time, and it said that our relationships don't have to be perfect to be powerful. And when I read that, it kind of like was, it totally like,
That's really good.
I was like, wow, no, that's great, because a lot of times we look at relationships as they've got to be perfect or they've got to look a certain way, whether it be a romantic relationship, whether it be a friendship, always looking at, but recognizing that, number one, we're imperfect people. So the minute you try to think that this relationship needs to be perfect, you're already setting up the expectations. You're setting up expectations that will never be fulfilled, because the reality of it is we're imperfect. And so relationship, even your marriage, right, or your dating relationship, they don't have to be perfect to be powerful.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And so again, as we go through this, as we go through these we've got some really cool series that we've laid out that we're going to be going through. And I'm really excited for our first series. We'll have some materials that will be available for you, to get and to, download digitally, all that good stuff, as we kind of go through these series together. But our goal and our mission is to, as best as possible, help you have healthy, grounded relationships, because we know that our relationships are what actually take us from level to level, right? Yeah. My relationship with you as my wife will ultimately be what supports me into the next level, which hopefully is always bigger and greater than the level that we were in.
Yeah, I think another thing to remember also is that how I view myself and how I treat myself is translated to others.
Absolutely.
So if I don't like myself, if I'm constantly talking down about myself, then that's going to translate in literally every single relationship I have. If I have confidence, if I am in a healthy place, if I'm growing, things like that, that will translate to every single relationship that I have.
Absolutely.
So I think that's important to recognize too. We talk about all these different relationships, but the way I respond to myself is
your self-relationship is vital.
Is the height of how I represent myself to other people.
Yeah, and I
can only love you as much as I
love myself.
Yeah,
and that's so huge, because a lot of times what happens is, at least for me, I know, episode 1 we kind of talked about, things that we navigated, things like that. But for me, a lot of it was I have to please everyone around me, and so then I got so caught up in making sure everyone else was happy that I never actually looked introspectively and said, well, am I happy?
Yeah.
Because my whole goal was I want to make everyone else around me happy. But I couldn't fulfill and I couldn't fulfill the needs that you had until I was able to see the needs that I had, in my own life and in my own self. And so the minute I was able to look introspectively and say, here's where I am as a human being, and then relay those things to you. But again, it goes back to, do I care about myself? Do I love myself enough, to share those things with other people?
Yeah. And I think also just recognizing that, is that growth is important. Growth is important. Listening to this podcast is a form of growth. Reading a book is a form of growth. Right. As long as you're spending that time taking care of you, then it translates into other things. And I think it's really important. We all have needs. Every relationship we have has needs. We said it at the beginning. If you want your relationship to grow, you have to nurture it. You have to care for it. It's the same thing for yourself. And so I think that's really important. And I think one of the things we'll go over too is the way to do that, because there are conflict is going to happen. It's a fact of life. No relationship is going to be perfect. Yeah. And so I know that we were talking the other day, even again, my plants, even with the plants, there's a difference in pruning and destroying. some things you just have to kind of cut back. Some things you have to lay down in order for that relationship to truly launch and go to the next level.
Right.
Specifically in our marriage, we've had to do that many times. There's times we've had to lay things down. There's times we've had to have really tough conversations, and recognizing there is a way that you have that conversation.
Right.
So even understanding all of that, those are ways that you nurture your relationships. Those are ways that you grow.
Well, and I think recognizing that relationship is work. That if I really want to see this thing come to the fullness of whatever it is, whether that be a marriage, whether that be a friendship, whether that be an association with someone at work or whatever, but at the same time, recognizing that friendships are not jobs. Because the minute I start to create relationships and say that it becomes transactional, unfortunately, I've kind of missed the mark when it comes to relationship. Because I read this again in another book.
Wow.
But the author made this statement. He says that real relationship says, I know you more, but I love you, but I don't love you less.
Yeah.
I know you more, but I don't love you less. How big is that?
Yeah.
Like, how big is that in a relationship, especially like even in marriage or in friendship, is to recognize, hey, I know everything about you, right? Me and Lucy, we know everything about each other. But rather than that pushing us away and putting a wedge in between us, it actually draws us together because it says, you know what? I know all that about you, but I don't love you any less.
Yeah, and I think even recognizing, keeping that in mind is important when that conflict moment does happen, or let's say when those conflict moments do happen, because there's multiple of them. That's growth. Yeah. And so understanding that if I can keep that principle in mind, if I recognize that, listen, quitting is never an option. How many times do we give up too soon? Like, I'll never forget one time I was talking to my sister, and I told her, I said, I think that this relationship that I have is just really unhealthy. I feel like I'm always having to be the one who's, who
gives,
to be that person, and I feel like this other person's never there for me. And, we were just talking and things. And the more I thought about it, I thought, that's really selfish. I'm not going to, and again, I think to preface, there are times
when it does become.
Yes, this wasn't one of those times.
Yeah. And
so even understanding that, how many times do we quit too soon on something that is so good for us, something that's so important for our lives? Yeah. And so that's why we've taken the stance that quitting is not an option.
Yeah.
We'll grow through it. We'll figure it out. But quitting is never an option.
Yeah. And that's very much in our marriage. And that's for a lot of the friendships and relationships that we have, and we understand, again, because we are imperfect. But also, another quote, listen, if you know anything about the Enneagram, I'm a 5.
Oh, I love Enneagram.
So and we'll go through that too in terms of like relationships, how you connect with people, all that, because that's a whole nother great series. But there's another quote in the book that the author said this: there are some people that we can never become until some people come into our lives.
Yeah, that's good.
So I'm going to say it again. There are some people we can never become until some people come into our lives. So there is that recognition that relationships are meant to mold me and shape me into someone that I never would have become had I not had that relationship. And on the other side of it, to even recognize some of those not so good relationships, maybe some of the unhealthy ones that you've experienced and you had in your life, guess what? Those can be used as learning tools for your life, rather than seeing them as failures, right? Thomas Edison said, I don't look at it as 10,000 failures. He said, but I do look at it as 10,000 ways of how not to do something.
Yeah.
So it's that recognition of, look at it as truth. Look at it as insight and wisdom, so that I don't make that same mistake moving forward. But even in relationships, understanding that if I go into a relationship saying, hey, there is something in this relationship that's going to help me become a better me, I just need to find what that gem is. Then that kind of changes the game in terms of how I enter relationships. Because a lot of times there's a lot of people that are super weary to enter, scared to enter new relationships because.
Well, and then constantly keeping up this guard.
Yeah.
And never having relationships.
Yeah, and that's
So
one of the
never having that growth point.
and that's one of the worst things that people can do is you've been hurt a lot in your life, and so, and I was that person. You've been hurt a lot in your life with relationships, and so your instinct is to just cut everybody off. Well, man, that's a very lonely, a very lonely life to live, and it's not fun because relationship is where. True growth and true acceleration. I believe relationships are catalysts that take us into new levels. And so, I heard this quote as well. We never go as far as our dream. We're only going to go as far as our team. So recognizing that the people that I put around me are what ultimately lead me into my dreams and, my goals that I have for my life.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah. So this podcast, this thing, like Lucy said, this show, it's all about just relationships and about us showing and just explaining kind of our own experiences and our own relationships, our own personal relationships that we have with people. And again, we're not pulling punches. We're not doing any of that. Some of them we'll have on the show with us. So, we're really excited about all of that and, really excited about our first series, that we're going to be releasing here soon.
Well, and I think something else that's important to bring out is the reason this is so important to us is we wouldn't be who we are today if it weren't for our relationships, if it weren't for the people in our lives. And so there's seriously times that I don't know how we would have made it through if we didn't have people. Yeah. Yeah. Not only in our relationships, but just in general, just heavy things. We talked about in the last episode, we're special needs parents. That was a big thing. That was a heavy thing to walk through, with the story of Alexander, how, for 3.5 years, he has this delay, and then we finally reached a point maybe it's just a delay. Maybe he's just going to grow out of it. Right. And then that bombshell moment of, no, this is actually what it is. And then having no, it almost felt like no ability to dream, no ability to see the future. You always think, well, I'm going to get married. I'm going to have kids. My kids are going to grow up, get married, leave the house. Then we're, the whole empty nest, learning how to navigate that. But all of a sudden it was that moment of, well, I don't even know. Everything that I thought was going to look a certain way may not look that way. Right. And we still don't know that. We still are navigating that. Yeah. But it was really important that somebody, one of our very deep relationships, she was with us whenever we found out. And so we were able to really process with her and just be vulnerable and just really, it was a very exposing moment for us. And I think, again, that was important for us to really just lay it all out and be as open as we could, because eventually, once we got it all out, we were able to grow. We were able to heal. Right. Healing was able to come. But it wasn't until we were able to just lay it all out with somebody, the ugly things, the things you would never say out loud. Because the reality of it is if you keep all of it in, it just stays bottled, and eventually it's going to come out. Right. And so it can come out in a safe place. Yeah. Or it can come out in an ugly way.
And all of that was in relationship, and I think that was the key for us. So it's making sure that we had a safe place, a safe relationship, that we could have those conversations where they weren't going to judge you for some of the things that you were saying.
That's a big thing.
That was huge for us. And that's what real relationship is. Again, real relationship says, I know you more, but I don't love you less. It is that reality of, hey, I can just say what needs to be said, and we have great and amazing friends who, when they hear us talk, they know that there's more to it, not just what we're saying.
Yeah, I think that's great, because recognizing that my words may be saying this, but really it's pain talking.
Right.
And
Right.
so that was important. And it's like, whenever I'm able to take 100% responsibility for myself, I'm able to take a step back
Yeah.
and really hear what's being said.
Right.
You hear it said all the time that when it comes to marriage, one of the biggest arguments is about money.
Yeah.
Well, let's be honest. It's not really about the money.
Right.
It's about how,
It was the trust that was broken.
it was the trust that was
or
broken. It was
whatever.
that the plan was, deviated from it. Money
Right.
was the tool that was used in that
Right.
to point it out,
Right.
but really it was a trust issue. So,
Right.
I mean, that's just an example, but really understanding that there are deeper things at play.
Right.
And as I'm growing and as I'm in relationship, that's where that stuff can kind of come out. And
Right.
that's how we all grow. That's
Right.
how we're all better people.
Yeah.
That's how unity happens. But
Yeah.
until those things happen, until I'm willing to own my own stuff
Right.
and really truly listen, we're just going to stay divided.
Absolutely.
We're
And
not
that's
gonna
where
grow.
and that's where again real relationship I think is so key. So you've got to find those people in your life that will just listen and not come back. I remember talking to Lucy one time and I said, a lot of times when I go to seek advice from people, a lot of times they want to fix what it is that you're asking of them. You're going and you're venting, you're talking about your wife or you're talking about work or whatever it may be. And they're like, well, have you done this? Or have you tried that? Or whatever, et cetera, et cetera. And, I told her sometimes I just need somebody to just listen and be like, man, that sucks.
Yeah.
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 And we all need that. And so even finding those people, and again, real relationships know when to give advice and when not to.
Yeah.
Real friends know when to, shut up and, real friends know when to say what needs to be said and call you out on your crap.
Want to call you out. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I
Like,
was
hey,
gonna
you're
say.
being an idiot. You're being stupid. So get over it, And so we've had
Vent
that.
and move on.
Yeah, and I've
Take
had that, and it's been
responsibility.
so great. We just as we navigated, and as we're continuing to navigate life, as a married couple with kids, and having a special needs kid, all that, relationship is just so vital, and we believe that relationship is vital for everyone.
Yeah.
And we believe that good, healthy relationships, like I said, can catapult you into what it is that you dream of.
Yeah. You can't go very far by yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's important to go with people.
And everyone will tell you that.
I mean,
Yeah.
you can go by yourself, but it's going to be really lonely when you
Right.
get there.
You have a lot of self-made billionaires, but those self-made billionaires probably didn't get there by themselves.
Yeah.
Help had to come in some form or fashion. And so, I just believe the most successful people, you've always got to look at the people that are standing behind them, because a lot of times those are the people that really help them to get there. The main person may have had the drive, the ambition, the dream, but they didn't get there by themselves.
Well, and then to have relationships to sustain you through that, because you're only going to go as far as your character can take you. And if you don't have
Yeah.
people to keep you grounded, then you may get there, but you're not going to stay there very long.
Yeah, you're going to fall and fail pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So that's what this podcast is all about.
Yep. Relationships.
Relationships. So listen, I want to encourage you, go subscribe to our
Yeah.
Facebook,
Instagram,
Instagram,
TikTok, podcast,
our Anchor FM,
YouTube,
on YouTube as well, Spotify.
basically all the things.
Go follow us everywhere.
Yes.
And here's how you can find us. Find us at Mingo and Lucy,
Yeah.
all one word, because that's who we are. I'm Mingo.
I'm Lucy.
See you later.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Take It From Us. Please remember to subscribe and join us next time.